Today's topic of the video is paying off your student loans. Now, I always hear so many people, I don't want to say cry about it, but it's kind of like they play the victim. They they go into school knowing that it's going to cost money, and not everybody has a really good family, so they're not able to pay for school. Now, I'm not going to get too into depth on the whole family portion of it, but basically, what I believe is that if you have a loving family, then they should at least be able to help out a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to be able to pay for the entire thing, but most likely, if you have a loving, stable family, they're going to be able to help out. And I think, then you get into financial aid, helping out people that are really poor, and then usually it's that money comes out of property taxes. So the local community college or the university or whatever will get taxes from the local community and the state and also the federal government to help those people go to school. So what I'm trying to say here is that a lot of the time when people are trying to go to school, they just go and get loans. And there's nothing wrong with getting a loan. The loan system for going to school is actually pretty good. But people are actually kind of irresponsible. And they're irresponsible because they kind of they just use it without really thinking about the repercussions. And that's what a lot of people do, honestly. With credit cards, with uh, getting a car, all these different types of things. And really, I think it's just because a lot of people are trying to either keep up with the Joneses, that saying how that goes, trying to impress other people, basically. Some people are trying to um, not just impress people, but they're also trying to, I guess, live up to an image they have about themselves. They don't want to be just a grunt worker or anything like that. They want to be, you know, in an office setting, working with just um, people in an office, and they think doing manual labor is too hard or something like that. And I can tell you from my experience, I've worked on farms. I've you know cleaned up stalls for horses. I've uh, worked in a recycling factory. I mean, I've done all sorts of really like jobs that most people say they don't like. And one thing I know is that when you're working, you're bringing home money, and that money helps take care of yourself, and you feel good about it. So I don't know. That aside, I wanted to get into this article. Now, in this article, basically, I went through it, and this lady right here, she's she's acting kind of like a victim, and she's doing that, I think, trying to get sympathy from her readers that are in a similar position. Now, is it good to act like you're a victim when you put yourself in that position? I think sometimes you're allowed to because we're all learning, and maybe some of the things that we do when we're children or younger, or have somewhat adolescent minds, because I'm guessing maybe she did it when she was around 18, and she possibly wasn't properly prepared by her family, and so now she's kind of feeling bad about it. She's feeling like she's a victim. So I'm not trying to bash her or anything. I'm just trying to go into the mindset of how this works, because it's also an important piece on paying back your student loans. Number one, you are not a victim. You are 100% responsible for whatever you take, right? So if you're getting a student loan, you are responsible for it. when you sign the paper, they tell you what the interest rates are, they tell you the amounts, and you accept it. Now, when I was going to school, I got student loans. And when I got student loans, I had, subsidized, unsubsidized loans. I had like 2-3 years of those student loans, and it was about $30K. Now, I at the time didn't make a whole lot of money, but what I did was when I was at school, I worked at the school making pizzas, and that helped pay for some of my tuition, and then the loans to help pay for some of my housing. But I also, lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. We had like couples inside the apartment, so there was two, one couple in one room and another couple in the other room, and so we're all going to school and we're all pitching in on the rent. So the rent was extremely cheap for us. Now, this girl in this article, she said she lived with her parents. So that's even easier. You don't have to buy food. You don't have to pay for an apartment. You don't have to pay for any of your utilities like internet or anything like that. I mean, that's pretty much the ideal situation. If you have parents that, love you enough to deal with you a few more years, that's awesome. I know not everybody has that, but I just wanted to go over this type of stuff because I want people to think about things the right way, I guess. I don't know if I am thinking about things the right way, but I think I am. So basically, I want to go over how to pay back a loan, what are your options, and how the contract works. Now, their contracts that they have set up are about, I think, 290 days. I could be wrong on that. Every contract could be different. But when I was going to school, it was about 290 to 390 days, just depending on what loan it was. And on those loans, that's like the default period. So if you don't pay one of your loans within those 290 days, then you're going to go into default. And that's like an automatic kind of, it changes the contract terms. And that's exactly what you don't want. So what I'm assuming this girl has done is she's just gone through her college career, racked up a bunch of debt, and kind of just paid the minimum the entire time. And she's surprised that the amount of money in terms of what she borrowed from what she has to pay now is higher. Now, she's surprised because she's lived basically for free, just gone to college, and she only makes she doesn't make a lot of money, which is one of the problems. But still, even with the amount of money that she made, I'm going to show you guys, she can still pay off all of her debt and manage it in a reasonable amount of time. If she, was married and had maybe like a husband to help her, or her parents were able to help her, obviously it would be so much faster. It'd be like, a couple years versus what I'll show you the calculations, but it's just, it's life choices, right? She decided to do this. So now I'm going to try to help anybody else that's in this situation, not trying to make you feel bad. But take responsibility, I think, is the first objective of being able to get over this hurdle. The hurdle being this crazy amount of money that she has to pay for. Now, she says, I had no idea so much of the money I was paying did nothing but abate rising interest, barely touching the principal sum. Now, this is something that I think a lot of people deal with even when they get older. They're trying to pay off a mortgage, or they're trying to pay off, any kind of debt, and they just pay the minimum payments thinking that the banks or the institutions that are loaning the money are like trying to help them pay it off as quick as possible without racking up any interest. Now, on most mortgages, just so you can have like a compare and contrast with this, most mortgages, when you are paying a mortgage, it's only taking down, maybe $100 a month, and the rest of it's going to interest. I mean, and that's on a pretty low interest rate. On some of this girl's interest rates, she's she's having to pay 11% on $24,300 almost. Now that's a super high interest rate for today. And she's going to have to tackle that. Now, I'm not going to, say that she's spending her money badly, but she clearly is taking care of herself. She has this really pretty necklace on. She has a really nice coat. She looks like she's taking care of herself, which is good. She's obviously working and everything like that. But when I was working to pay off my student debt, I didn't buy anything. I drove a super crappy car that cost, I think, maybe $1,500, an Oldsmobile Alero, and I just worked nonstop. All my money that I made, that I had to spare, went into the loan. And I had to live like that for several years in order to get it paid back. And that's what a lot of people aren't willing to do. You have to want it, right? And I'm going to tell you how I did it and kind of give you like my mindset around it. So just stick with me here. So let's just go through this article a little bit more. She wanted to determine how much money you've actually paid to a loan. You have to browse your account history. So now she's talking about how she was trying to evaluate how much she paid into her loan and how much she had left to pay and all that different type of stuff. Now, when I was going to school and I was trying to pay my loans off, I was on top of it. I wanted to get it paid off. That was my number one priority. I didn't care about anything else. I mean, obviously eating food, taking care of my family or whatever. But that's what I did. On the website, it tells you if you're past due, it tells you how much you have left to pay, it tells you the interest rates. And now what she's trying to talk about here is that she had to download a jumbled Excel file that's filled with extraneous details that don't make simple addition or subtraction easy. So she's trying to gain sympathy for her plight by just not taking responsibility. Now, any action that I do, I take responsibility for it. I may not always agree with somebody about, this and that, but she's still trying to, push off responsibility, say that somebody else is responsible, that it was because of the jumbled Excel file that I'm so out of sorts or whatever, when she just needs to take responsibility. Maybe it makes the article more interesting. I don't know her motivations for writing this article, and I'm not trying to bash her. It's a difficult thing to go through, no matter who you are. So, not trying to be mean here. She says she's paid $18,000 in interest, and the principal is $171,000. And that's because when you're going to school, if you get an unsubsidized loan, that loan is continuously charging interest, and you have to pay for it. That's why they even explain to you in the paperwork that you're going to have to do that. And at my college, when I was applying for it and signing up for all this stuff, the the ladies that worked at the financial aid office, they told me all this stuff. And yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the motivation is behind this, but I just have to say that, yeah, if you get a loan your first year, and then 3 years later you're still paying only the interest, you're not paying any extra, right? It's not going to go into anything. But the idea is that you're going to have more money at a time when you have very little money. And so it's kind of like you get to jump into school, but while you're going to school, you only pay the interest, but you're not even touching any of your principal. It's not, your loan amount is not going down. And I guess she just didn't understand that. And she's surprised that she's paid so much money and it still hasn't gone down. And I don't know why this is surprising, but I think it's because she just hasn't taken, responsibility. Remove that. She just hasn't taken responsibility. So, right here, that's what I'm getting from this article. I'm not trying to bash her. She talks about the grace period after you graduate. So right after you graduate, you can hopefully get into a job, save up some money, and then start paying down your student loans. So they give you a grace period on the subsidized loans. And I think that's what she's talking about there. She says, theoretically, when you decide to continue your education, you don't have to worry about making payments until you graduate. That wasn't the case for me, as I decided to attend graduate school outside the United States. A master's degree I don't have any student loans for because universities outside of America don't believe in charging $60,000 an hour. So I think this is kind of like a jab at American universities. It's a jab at American universities because she's kind of writing off the citizens in the other country. Now, in America, we believe in, the well-off people. They can take care of themselves. We have a social safety net, right? We have Social Security, Medicaid. Most states have some kind of poor assistance for health situations, and almost every emergency room is not going to turn anybody away if they're in need. But I don't want to get too political into this, but basically, in that situation, the money that's taken from everybody around is money for taxpayers, right? Taxpayers are paying money either from their house or, sometimes the amount of money that individual household will have to pay, can be $3, $5, $1,000 a month just in taxes. And that money goes to underwrite some of the loans for the program. It goes for the financial aid assistance for the very poor people who basically have no income, no way for the family to support them. That goes to them. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't pay, like we don't have taxes on individuals just to pay for education for everybody who wants to go. We don't have that. Right now, one of the things that kind of happens with this is schools know this. They know that there's money coming in from taxes. They know how wealthy the community is. They know how much financial aid is going to be coming in based on, high school statistics and all this other type of stuff, imports from other places when people are applying. They can adjust their tuitions. And the administrative offices have so many employees, sometimes way too many employees. And these campuses get really, really big. And so they just keep raising the tuition, raising the tuition, raising the tuition. And that's kind of a problem with like a guaranteed tax coming from the people going directly into these universities. Now, I know you can get into the politics which way in that. I just wanted to point out the economics of that supply and demand. It kind of dictates what the prices are going to be. So if people literally can't afford it and they're not getting financial aid, they're not getting student loans because they're like, hey, I want to be in financial debt for 20 years, or I'm going to have to live, paycheck to paycheck on the bare minimum for 5 years. People are going to be able to make those decisions. But a lot of the time, people aren't making those decisions. People are just kind of like going from one situation saying, okay, college is required. I'm going to college after high school. When that's not really the case. College is not always required in a lot of fields. But that's just what people think. And it's kind of like a rite of passage in a lot of the movies that they've made over the years. Like you go to college and you have fun and it's supposed to be this great experience. And, it's probably a great experience for a lot of people, but that experience is like specifically designated for people who are super bright, they get a grant, scholarship because they're athletic or whatever. And then the other people who are just, they come from a very good family. And what does that mean? Does that mean that the family's evil or something like that? No, it just means that that family, could just have a mom, a mother, and a father, and that family just worked hard throughout their life, and they're able to either they saved up money every year in order to be able to pay for school at some of the best colleges in the world. Like people all over the world come to American universities. So that's one piece of the puzzle. It's kind of getting in depth and a little bit off track, so I won't go too deep on this type of stuff. But basically, that's what she's doing. She's trying to take a jab at America. So, and that's not very cool, as you can see. I like America. I think America's great. And I mean, there's still things we can improve, but yeah, anyway. So, over that year, my inability to make my loan payments added $5,000 in compounded interest to the principal sum of $24,000 loan, settling its total at $29,000. That bump sent my total student loan to $95,000. It was clear I had to find a job right away. So again, she's kind of like retroactively discovering like, oh, geez, I just got charged $5,000 because she just doesn't understand the math of it, or she just hasn't jumped online to check out a calculator, or I don't know. And this realization should have come before it got bumped up $5,000. And she's saying over the year, my inability to make my loan payments. And I don't really know what that means. She said she was, begging on the phone trying to get another grace period, and that she just graduated from her master's program. Well, again, this is your life. You're not guaranteed time to go to do a master's program. Not everybody gets to do it. That's just the way that it is. If you have bills to pay, you should have paid your bills, taken care of your stuff. You wouldn't have to pay that extra $5,000 and then go do your master's program afterwards. It's not going to kill you. Then you're going to get real world experience. Then when you go and take that master's program, things are going to either make more sense, or you're going to figure out that they're kind of outdated or whatever. So, I don't know. So, the response was unanimous and deafening silence. The age-old catch-22. I needed experience to get a job, but I also needed a job to gain the experience. So now she's saying that she had trouble trying to find a job, and when she had trouble trying to find a job, she couldn't pay for her loan. The entire reason she went to school all those years, like her college advertised to her, and the college she went to in both countries advertised to her, do this and you will get hired because we're giving you valuable skills. Well, if she's having an inability to get hired, obviously those skills aren't needed. And that's why we go to school. Now, if you have like free time, and this disposable cash and you can just go to school simply because it's what you love, that's not the same thing as being a poor person, which she clearly is. I mean, I don't know anything about her situation, but she can't even pay any of her stuff and her family's not helping her. So she's poor and she's going off and doing all these things and she's getting money from other people. Other people are giving her this money to go and do this thing she wants. They're making a bet on her. They're making a bet on her, hoping that they get a little bit of interest and that she's going to pay them back. And she's trying to get more sympathy. And, I feel bad for her in this situation, but again, you got to take responsibility. Said when she finally got her first time full-time job, she had to pay $20,000 a year. She got paid $20,000 a year. She would make $1,400 a month. And I think in here she got to live with her parents. And she made the choice to live with her parents in the Bronx on the last stop of the 6 train. It was nearly a 2-hour commute each way to the office. Okay, that's again, you kind of put yourself into a corner. If you go to school, then you're going to have all these bills. But now you got to find a job to pay for all your bills you got. And then now you have to commute super far to go to a job in the city. Because most of the time, if you have a degree, they're going to require you to move to a city. And it's kind of like this, and the city's super expensive. So it's kind of like all these things come together and force you into a specific path, a specific mentality, of feeling like you're a victim, seeking sympathy, and all these different types of things. And it's kind of crazy. And I'm not going to get too far into it. Basically, I just wanted to show you guys this, kind of go through it just a little bit. But yeah. Now I'm going to go to this little website here. This is like a loan calculator from the financial aid website. And I just took some of the numbers that she had and did the calculations for it, just this little calculator here. And for the loan that was like $24,000 at 11%, that's just paying interest is about $225 a month. But if you want to pay it off, I set the payoff time as 5 years. That's the loan term. Now, that's completely different than, say, for instance, it's kind of like a credit card, but the loan terms, they're also, they set you on a payment plan, basically. But you don't have to stick to that payment plan. It's just kind of like a helpful guide, right? So like you can still manage your other bills. And if you have other bills, then you're not going to go over. It's not going to be too much of a burden. But if you're literally just starting out, you're just getting your first job, you're living with your parents, this is the best time to just knock it out. Don't buy anything. Knock it out. So if you did the 5-year plan that this is suggesting, you're going to pay a total interest of $7,400. That's a lot of interest. At 11%, it's not surprising, but that's a lot of interest. Now, if we do the next closest one, which is interest rate of 5%, was like on the $19,000 loan, which is like her second most costly loan. And she's going to have to pay $5,000. And this is on 10 years. This just kind of gives you an idea. If you stick to their payment plans, this is kind of what happens to you. Now, there's one other thing I was going to show you guys. And here it is. So I got all the numbers for the loans that she had before she went into depth on all this other stuff. Kind of just took like her starting point, right? So if you didn't make all the mistakes that she made, then this is kind of where you would start from if you're in her exact situation. So this is if anybody doesn't know, this is just a Jupyter notebook. I know Python, I'm a programmer, So this was much easier for me than using Excel. But I'll try to describe all this stuff and highlight it and everything. So basically, this is the loan amount. This is the interest rate, right? This is just a list in Python. And I print it out just to show that, everything's working right. So if we go over here, we can see it in a more readable format. That's all I do, is just kind of spit it out in a more readable format. And then in the method 1, this is the method they want you to use. It is somewhat slow and restrictive. I'm going to show you the interest-only payments for these loans on a monthly basis. So, like, say for instance you had a loan that didn't require you to pay anything more than just the interest. That's what this is. So if she had all these loans and she only had to pay the interest, nothing else for eternity, then this is kind of what it would be like. But it's also taking into account the amount of money that she has, like that she's making, that she's bringing in. So each loan has a yearly interest breakdown, and then it has a monthly payment breakdown, and that's just taking the yearly and dividing by 12. So basically, on one of her loans, it's only like $9 of interest. Another loan is about $18 of interest, $13, $9, $6, $4. So really low interest rates for these ones. They're not really doing much to you if you had to pay those, just the bare minimum. If you had an interest-only type of setup on your contract, which not all loans are the same. You need to check your loan contract to figure out how it's calculated and stuff to see if it applies to you. But what you want to do is have your own system. Stay within the rules of your contract, but have your own system. But this is their system for an interest-only contract, if you have one of those. So the yearly total is about $5,192. So let's say, for instance, she went to 4 years of school, right? She did, say she got her big loan her first year, and then she got a bunch more when she went down the line. But the first one is the one that stuck with her at the 11% one. She's going to be getting, what is it? About $3,000 every single year added to that. And that's not including her other loans that maybe she took for room and board. Maybe some are unsubsidized. Maybe some others are subsidized. Maybe she used the money for things not related to school. Maybe she was just like overspending on things, not being frugal. So yeah, so multiply this by 3, and she's going to owe another $15,000. I mean, if you don't pay it, or that's how much interest she's going to pay, and that's exactly what she showed. She paid about $18,000 in interest, and yeah, that's just common sense. That's how it works, right? You have a percentage. You have amount of money that you owe. You multiply the percentage by the amount of money that you owe. You get something back. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's like the basics. If you just want to break it down the simplest way that you can, that's it. And I put her income at 15,000. I can run this again to show it at like different levels. But I figured, $15,000 maybe each month, maybe she has to pay for her own cell phone bill, or maybe she has to pay for her car insurance and gas or something like that. But it sounds like she just rides the train, so she doesn't even have a car or have to pay for gas or insurance. So I think she's basically, all of her money could go towards her debt, and that's like $20,000. But we'll just say 15 just because. So now this is again just I had to convert it from a dictionary to a list, and I sorted it based on the highest percentage rates, and then going down. As you can see here, 11. Yeah. So now here's my little function that I had. So this just takes into account all your interest you have to pay, and then also all of the extra payments that you're going to be making from your income. So a monthly income of $1,250. She said she got $1,400, so maybe she spends, 150 bucks on something else for fun. So you can still go out, watch a movie and stuff like that, a couple times a month, easy, and buy a snack. After all that, interest-only payments, if you stick to the $15,000 mark, it's going to take you about 62 months or about 5 years to pay it off. And you're going to pay about $12,000 in interest. And that's if you don't make any mistakes and you start paying basically right away. Now, if you have like a period of time when you're just going to school and you don't make any payments at all, like you don't work when you're in school like I did. I got a job on campus. I got a work internship program that helped pay some of the tuition. So I had a job on campus, I had a work internship, and then I also had another job, working in stalls on a farm, just helping doing manual labor. And I think I even, a little bit later down the road, I started doing some freelance work when I realized that my skills were actually somewhat valuable in the marketplace. But so that's about $13,000. It's not bad for all those loans that you had. I mean, you're still gonna have to be working at it for 5 years, and that's not to say that you don't get a pay raise. I mean, after 5 years, after a couple years of you doing the same job, only making $20,000 an hour, you should be getting a pay raise eventually. So I didn't take that into account. This is just to say you're making the bare minimum. You can still do it. She could be 18, go to school for 4 years, 22, and then 27. She's debt free, got a great job and a career. That's not bad. A lot of people would dream of that. So the next method I'm going to talk about is sometimes, just like in these other financial aid calculators here, they also kind of put you on a payment plan so that you will pay it off, right? So they kind of force you to pay extra into principal so that you pay off your loan. So if you wanted to pay it off in 10 years, or some of them are like 7, 6, they have different payment terms. So I didn't get like too technical with this. Basically what I did was I just multiplied whatever the interest rate payment was and I doubled it, which is kind of what they do. Maybe it's a little bit different. Just depends on what the terms and the length of period of time they want to wrap you in to pay. So again, it's basically the same formula as before. And this one is 62 months and again, 5 years. You pay a little bit more in interest because you don't have as much disposable cash to focus in on one loan at a time. And if you have a big loan and you're focusing in on one loan at a time, it can really knock those out quickly. Which brings us to the second method, which is my method. And I'm not going to get in too depth into it, but let's just say that this method is something I think is simple, but does require a bit of understanding of the agreement you made with the loan provider. Most loans have a time window before you go into default. The default time period for people, I know, is around 290 days. So that's kind of what I remember. It was a while ago for me, but you should check your own. I'm not a financial, advisor, so I hold no liability for your life. You take responsibility of your own life. But this is my story. So that's about 9 months, but we will round it up to 10 to make the math easier. And I think I actually did keep it at 9. The other part is, I did keep it at 9. The other part of the method is this could affect your credit, this method. Because what we're doing is we're not paying the minimum payments until we reach right before the mark of when they put the loan into default. And the reason why this is good is because, again, you have more disposable cash. So if you had 7 loans and each loan is taking $50 from you, right? If you didn't pay all 7 at once, right? And you just let them go to 290 days, depending on how much they are, you could probably pay off a couple of them faster than just slowly paying them off. And so you can see results quicker, which helps your psychology. And turns out it's actually a good method to save some money. It's not a lot of money, but it does save some. And again, it's kind of like you have to take responsibility. You have to decide what's best for you. So basically, as a broke college student or newly in the job market, I don't know if this is a big deal, but you got to establish it. And the third thing you got to know is if you're going into student loans, do not accept forbearance. Do not get into a position where you're going to have forbearance. Forbearance, or any type of technical term when they call you, because they're going to repeatedly call you if you don't pay, right, on their terms that you set up in the contract on time. They're going to give you a time period. Nothing's going to happen to you. It's just they're going to call you and kind of pester you, which personally for me, I kind of like them pestering me. I was still paying my loans. I was just paying the loans my way, not their way. And this is kind of like a different type of thinking. So when I was paying my loans back, I was paying it kind of changed. I would pay either the one that had the most amount of money in it or the one that had the highest interest rate, just depending on, kind of how I wanted to do it. But in this one, I kind of just wanted to get the biggest loans out of the way first, since that usually racks up the largest payment. So again, when you're waiting that 290 days or whatever yours is, they're going to call you and pester you, which I kind of liked. It kept me focused on my goals. They'd call me and they asked, "Do you want forbearance? Do you want a forbearance? Do you want a forbearance?" And I said, "No, no, no, no," every single time. You do not want a forbearance. It changes the terms of your contract, and then they can start charging you, additional fees, more money, and all this different type of stuff. So you don't want that. So student loans, they have certain regulations, just like any financial institution, any company. They have rules that they have to obey, right? So when you accept that forbearance, you're changing the terms of your contract. Don't want to do it again. So if we go by my method, you basically you focus on one loan. You don't pay anything on any of the other loans until you have to, right? And then you pay off whatever the minimum amount that you have to pay in order to avoid it from being defaulted or being forced into a forbearance situation. And this saves a little bit, not so much time, but about a month, but it saves you about $3,000 doing this method. So, and again, you can go and just pay the minimums on all of them, which usually is just the interest. Or you could go in and have one that's like a 7-year term and you just pay it for 7 years. And there's not much of a difference. I mean, you're going to be paying for the second method, it's 13.5 almost. And this one's, 11.2. So it's not a huge difference, but it's just, again, different ways that you can calculate this stuff. And in whatever way that you want to do, the most important thing is to just get it done. Pay it off. Nobody else is responsible for you making a decision to buy services from an educational institution besides you. You are responsible for it. So before you go and you get a loan, or even after you go and get a loan, make sure you know what you're doing. And if you don't and you get into a hairy situation, you can still climb yourself out of it. Even with $15,000 and, $30,000, $40,000 in debt, it's still possible. So, I mean, there's not much else I can say. We can go and read it. Sometimes we'll read the conclusion. It says, I can recall my father's red face that afternoon so clearly now, the pain-pleading look in his eyes. All he and my mother wanted was for me to have a better life, one unencumbered by the difficulties they had always associated with money. All they wanted was for me to have more. And now I'll have almost $200,000 less. It's not fair to them, to me, or to anyone else with student loans. Sometimes I struggle to imagine a future in which life doesn't swing from one paycheck to the next like a crushing pendulum of debt. But I know it exists. The year 2030, with its flying cars, hoverboards that don't explode, and a long awaited cure for brain freeze, is good for me financially. I'll have finally paid off my student loans, and now I can finally consider having a big wedding, becoming a mother, or buying a house. It might seem a little late in life to you, but I know many of my peers so long in debt and ignored will be exactly the same place. 40 will have actually be the new 20. What a comforting and not at all terrifying thought. So again, she's trying to be the victim. She's trying to act like it's America's fault. I did it. I'm from a poor family. My family gave me little help to none. I mean, they helped me move. That was it. So, I mean, the reason why you have $200,000 in debt is because you're not on top of your stuff. You're not taking responsibility. And it's kind of sad because now you have this insanely high debt. I mean, the reason why your family has lived paycheck to paycheck is because you make bad decisions. That's the truth. And it sucks because not everybody needs to go to college. There's so many jobs out there, and people always look down on them. Like, go be a maid. Go clean people's houses. Go become a secretary. Be a waitress. I mean, those jobs are perfectly fine jobs. You wouldn't be $200,000 in debt. I mean, sure, you wouldn't have these experiences of being in college and sitting around and eating pizza and studying, all night long, and all those things that go with college. You wouldn't have those experiences, but you'd have other ones. Not everybody needs to go to college, and you need to take into account what you have to do. And there's so many other ways you can get educated. I mean, there's Udacity, right? There's all these cool things. There's Coursera. All these cool things, right? So if you want to get educated, a lot of the time, many of these companies, they don't care if you have a degree. They just care that you're hardworking, you show up on time, you're interested in the topic that you want to get into. If you're going for an intellectual field. But if you're not, then it doesn't matter. And there's so many cool things you could do. I mean, look at their course catalog. Compare it to what you did, right? Artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, computer vision, AI and programming, data scientists, data analysts, data foundations, all these different courses. Android, full stack, front end, mobile, React, Unreal, iOS, robotics, Python, self-driving cars, flying cars, digital marketing, Google AdWords, Design Sprint Foundation, Data Foundation, Business Analyst. I mean, all these different things. Go to Coursera. It's the same thing. But they have colleges that, just take, for example, this school here. This is a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, right? And their course is online, and they want to charge, 10,000 to 17,000 euros, which is probably, probably 25,000 bucks, something like that. But what are they going to teach you in computer science? What are they going to show you that you couldn't learn online for free. All you would have to do is prove to a potential hiring employee your skills. That's all you have to do. It's going to save you a whole lot more money than paying these people. I mean, that's not to say that these new online things are bad. They're good. You learn a lot of stuff in them, and some of them are actually really cheap. This is one of the more expensive ones, but it's also from like a real university or real college. So that's why it's more expensive. But if you go to, software development instead of a computer science degree or a master's or bachelor's or any of that other thing, you can just learn about algorithms. You can learn about object-oriented programming. Algorithms too. You can take robotics, C, C++. You can take all these courses. And I mean, another one that a lot of people don't talk about is Khan Academy. This is 100% free, and you can actually show your progress, right? So, I mean, I've messed around with this quite a bit, and you can learn a lot. They have all sorts of math courses. They have, physics, biology, health and medicine, electrical engineering, computer programming, and computer science. They literally have computer science course right here. And most of this stuff is going to be, the exact same thing you're going to learn in school. The only difference is you're not going to get a piece of paper, which, I'm not saying it's not worth it, but if you're from a poor family, you don't have enough money to go, and you're very bad with money, don't go and get a huge loan unless you think about it first. It's just common sense. It's supposed to be common sense. But a lot of family, they're not teaching people this. And I had to learn the hard way. I went through times in my life when, I'd get a loan and I wouldn't pay it back, and I'd get in more debt and, go from one bad job to the next because I wasn't planning my life. You have to live intentionally. And yeah, I'm not sure what else I can say on this other than, I'll put this notebook online. It's not like super in depth. It's not super accurate. It's just supposed to be like a quick little way to visualize how you would pay it off, so you can actually think about it. When I paid my loan off, I got them to send me a piece of paper saying you paid your loan off, all your loans off. I called them on the phone to submit my payment every time. I didn't do it online because I wanted that kind of like verbal verification, because you want to feel good. You're working so hard. You're spending all your money. You want to feel good about paying your debts off. You want to feel good about paying the bill that you accumulated through what you took when you went to school, right? All your teachers, you paid for all your teachers. You paid for the building. You paid for all of it. That's awesome. It's an awesome accomplishment. And you should feel very good about that. So that's why I took any chance I could. I celebrated, I paid one of my loans off. I'd celebrate, go out to eat with my then girlfriend, now wife. I mean, these are the things that you got to do, I think, to make yourself feel good about it. I put something on my wall, on my loans. I'd look at it every single day. I'd work really hard during the day, and I'd just be thinking, okay, I'm going to make this month, I'm going to make, $2,000 or whatever. And I'm going to be able to pay off my student loans even faster. Oh, I'm going to work, that extra hour. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to, go feed some hay to the horses, or, shovel crap. Do whatever I can. Go work in an RV park. I did that before. Go fix people's Wi-Fi routers, just random people on Craigslist to help them out. I mean, obviously, if you're a woman, you might be scared about doing some stuff like that, but you know, got to do what you got to do. And I just think that it's surprising to me the way some people think sometimes, but then again, it doesn't surprise me because I kind of thought that way too in a lot of things. But I made it through it. Okay, that's what all I'm saying is that you can do it too. You can do it. Get it done.